Good morning, wherever you are in the world, whether it be morning, noon, and some of you folks watch at midnight and others in the evening. I have not talked about the Primemill yet, and there's been reasons for that. I do have it now ever since 522 came out in the software. Prior to that, I had access to a Primemill, and outside of zirconia, it just really wasn't working well. In fact, even with zirconia, it had some hitches initially. And I know a lot of people in the field that got the early version of the Primemill were having issues, and I've heard that from the techs around the country. I would say now that it's bar none my best milling unit for most of my mills. And notice I said that for most of the mills. My MCXL dry mill is still my workhorse for fine mill for e.max, and there's a reason for that. The left burr, I have an option of the 12, which is about 0.85 on the end of that step burr, and that gives me my best fine mill. Now with the Primemill fine mill, the left burr option I have right now is 1.4, so that's a larger burr, and I do see the difference in the margins. Now I can get it to mill well with the fine mill, but I have to bulk the margins up more than I would with my M6L, so I don't get that micro chipping with a marginal parameter of at least 100 microns. So you have to change that in the software, and you got to do it before you do all your manipulation virtually of that design. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that it's going to repropose when you up the parameter in the software. The reason why is you don't have a default option to change the margin parameter thickness in the current version of the software. We used to have that, so we could always set it up first. So right now it's at 50. 50 works great for EF mill, in my opinion. For the fine mill, which most of us do in our clinical theater, it doesn't work quite as well, so I get those little chipping on the margins. So let me just clarify this again. Right now I have a smaller burr on the left with the M6L, and I find that that is better for my fine mill. In fact, right now I'm milling out cases for classes, and what I have found is when I'm milling these two together that the MCXL is slightly faster than the Primemill for fine mill. However, that's different for EF burr mill. The EF burr mill on the Primemill is bar none the best. It's faster. In fact, it's fast enough that it's reasonable for my inlay onlays and conservative onlays where I have thin margins, or even veneers chairside, because I can mill out a veneer in extra fine mill or an onlay in just around 12 to 14 minutes. And that's great. However, for zirconia, the Primemill is the best bar none. With the carbide burrs, I find that the Primemill, particularly if you use a size 12 block like Katana, in super speed mill, and the mills are flawless. Usually they're somewhere between 4 to 6 minutes for a muller, which makes the difference in your clinical theater. When you go to finish, you can use the speed fire, which is 18.5 minutes for Katana, and that is really, really, really fast. So I do like that option. Also, the marginal mill for this is superior than the MCXL with zirconia. You have to really have fresh new burrs to make the zirconia carbide mill in the MCXL work well. I've used them both, but it's more consistent with the Primemill. So initially I said the Primemill was the zirconia mill beast, and I still say that. The ceramics are good. They're not significantly better, as I mentioned, with fine mill, until we can get a smaller left burr with the Primemill. In fact, when I go way back to my compact units, they had the 1mm burr on the left. The mill and the margins were superior, so I always used a smaller burr on the left, which mills the intaglio surface down to that margin. So I will be doing more videos on how I optimize Primemill here in the future on this site, but for those that have wondered why I don't have mill on my site is because I couldn't fully endorse it until now. It really entered the market probably 2 years before it was ready for performance. And then when you're thinking about the cost of this milling unit, it is worth the cost when it's working. And that's my main concern I have about companies. I'll be real honest with you. I'm just being really transparent here. I'm a huge proponent of CEREC. I've used it since 2003, I believe, and it's been a major cornerstone in my restorative theater. So when you're paying that much money for equipment, or if it were like a car, you would expect it to perform well. And eventually it does, but in the meantime, you have to deal with the frustrations, particularly when you're in your clinical theater and you have to stay on time and things aren't working. It's really frustrating for us in our theater. So if Dentsply Sirona people are watching this, I would just advise you to pay attention to what we have to deal with. And as an educator, I have to go out and help people get around this. And even in my hands, I had a hard time getting around the Primemill in the early stages, but it's really working now, so I could fully endorse it as my milling unit. However, I still am glad I have my M6L until we get a smaller burr, step burr for the left. Just sharing my heart because I care about you folks, and whatever I recommend is what I do. And if something's not working right, then I'm gonna share it to the world, because I really care about the quality and ethics of what we do in our clinical theater. So if you have any questions or comments, post them below. In the meantime, have a great day, and I'll see you folks in that next video. Bye now.